So we are officially done with your innate, okay, immune system. We were able to discuss all the components of your innate immune system from your first line of defense with your anatomical barriers such as your skin, some defense mechanisms such as your coughing, sneezing, and production of your airwalks together with your tears. Saliva also is part of your innate immune system. And then we were also able to dig deeper on the second line of defense of your innate, that is your cellular and humoral. And we were able to cover your cellular, specifically your immune cells, and we're able to cover your phagocytic cells. You have your basophils, eosinophils, then you have your monocytes and macrophages as serve as your good APC or antigen presenting cells. And since we were able to cover your phagocytic cells already, then we jump off to your inflammation because they are the main key player there, class. If there are invading fungal agents, bacterial agents, or viral agents, then the first line of defense will be your cellular response. And the response is the response result to your inflammation, then therefore the acute phase reactants will also be increased. Kaya we were able to cover that one also. And then after that one class, we were also able to uh, cover the two types of your phagocytosis. We have your direct and indirect. And with the direct does not require opsonin. An example of your opsonin are your complement factors. For example, C3b as the major opsonin or most potent opsonin. And we were also able to cover your indirect phagocytosis, which requires opsonin as we discussed together with your antibodies. And then the main goal of your phagocytosis is, of course, to eliminate your infectious agent. After that one, we were also able to jump off to your humoral uh, response, specifically with your complement, and you have your cytokines. In complement, we're able to cover the three pathway. You have your alternative pathway, classical pathway, and MBL pathway class. Okay, so with your MBL pathway, you have your mannose binding lectin pathway, you have your MASP 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you also have your alternative pathway, which does not have a recognition unit because the C3 will naturally will naturally hydrolyze class K by water, then producing your C3b, and then your factor B will be cleave to factor BB. Kaya meron tayong ano class, diba? C3BBB plus propertine as your C3 convertation alternative pathway. And then you have your classical pathway, of course, you have your recognition units for your ano class? Ano nga yung mga recognition unit natin sa classical pathway natin class? Uh, you have your C1QRS class, then you have your two antibodies class, right? And then you have your C1QRS, and then your S has an enzymatic activity, then therefore, it will cleave the most abundant complement factor, which is your C4. And then your C4, second will be your C2, and then C4A and B, then C2A and B, then you will form C4B2A, which is your C3 convertase. And then C3 convertase will increase the loop in degrading your C3 to C3A to C3B. C3A are anaphylotoxin. Then the C3b will bind to your C4b2A, forming a C4b2A3b, which is your C5 convertase. That will cleave your C5. Okay, kaya siya tinawag na convertase, diba? Kasi kino-convert niya si C3 into two parts. Then your C5a is a potent anaphylotoxin, and then your C5b will bind to your bacteria, forming a MAC complex together with your C6, 7, 8, and then 9, and then MAC complex. Okay, having your cell lysis. Then next, you have your cytokines. So, so for cytokines class, we cover a lot with the cytokines. However, in the book, there are a lot to cover for the cytokines. Pero with the discussion, we will only be discussing your TH1 and your TH2 cytokines. I hope that you were able to still memorize that one. So we are officially done with the innate immune system. So we will jump off to your adaptive immunity. So for your adaptive immunity, kukuha tayo ng cell with your immune cells, specifically with your lymphocyte. In the peripheral blood class, we cannot identify a B cell and a T cell. So we classify them as a general one, which is your lymphocyte. Okay, so we will jump off to your adaptive immunity with the T cell ontogeny and the B cell ontogeny class. So I know that you are asking, anong kailangan ba? Why do we need to like study this one class, di ba? You will ask that one. Ano kailangan man jud nato i-memorize ning ontogeny or development with your T cell and your B cell? Why class? Because when we will jump off to your midterm, we'll be discussing autoimmune diseases. Okay, the consequences of your immune system, uh, where it originates on the development of your T cell and your B cell. Kaya kung mamali magud na siya class, pag for example, may mali na step during the development of your B cell, it can lead to a specific condition together with your T cell. Like for example, in your B cell, with your T cell class, we have a lot of class. We have a lot of conditions, and one of that one is your D George syndrome. And by midterms, I will like try to explain that one. Okay, so now we will try to cover your adaptive immunity class. Okay, okay, ayun yung mag-move class. Okay. So, for the adaptive immunity class, kay a component of the immune system that adapts, kaya sa tinawag na adaptive, di ba? Depending on the antigen encountered. So, kaya siya term as adaptive class because the response will depends on the type of antigen that they encounter. Like, for example, if they encounter a parasitic infection, and then a different response will be processed with your adaptive immunity. Okay, so magkaiba din sa bacterial, magkaiba din sa ano natin, uh, bacterial, fungal, and viral. Okay? So this is considered as the third line of defense kasi our first line of defense will be on the innate, dalawa yun. So you have your anatomical, humoral, and then the third line will be your adaptive class. Okay? So basi matingala mo ba, dapat di ba duha lang siya? But when you try to recall the discussion in your innate immunity class, tama, you have your two line of defense. You have your anatomical barriers and defense mechanism, and then second will be your cellular and humoral. Then third will be your adaptive immunity. Okay, this will result from the exposure of your immunogens. Okay, immunogens are antigens. Okay, so all immunogens are antigens, but not all antigens are immunogens. So we'll try to cover that one after your midterm exam. So for the component of your adaptive blood, still the same. Okay, so you have your cellular lymphocyte, okay, T cell and B cell. Then you have your humoral, still covered with your cytokines. However, we will not be discussing your complement here kasi siya ang part ng innate natin class, but we'll be discussing your antibodies. So, characteristic of your adaptive, we know this one already, diba? During our first discussion, they have the three major characteristic class. You have your tolerance, ability to distinguish self and non-self. So, dapat yung T cell at saka B cell mo, kilala niya if kung when they try to circulate, kilala niya dapat na ito heart antigen to, ito liver antigen to, ito kidney antigen. Kasi pag hindi niya yan nakilala class, the problem will be and the problem will lead to autoimmune diseases. And then, sir, how does the B cell and the T cell determines and or distinguish if kung self or non-self antigen to? And spoiler with T cell, we have your thymus. The thymus will try to educate the T cells to different self-antigens para pag madto na sila sa peripheral blood, they will recognize na kani siya, ano ni siya, atuan ng antigen. Okay? Then you have your specificity refers to the cell surface receptor specific for a certain fragment of E antigen. And we have your epitope class. For example, here for the epitope class, sorry, nawala siya. Wait lang. Okay. So, for example, an epitope class here, try me to illustrate an epitope. If this one is your Streptococcus pyogenes class, di ba naman na sila M protein? Kunti mo niya M protein class. Di ba? Sa ilahang surface. Di ba? M protein are antigen. So, this M protein class, we call this one E antigenic determinant. Or we also call that one class an epitope. Okay? So the part of the epitope, like for example, mo antibodies. Say if this is the antibody class, the part where the antibody will bind to your epitope, we call this one paratope. Okay? So, ang partner ni epitope, paratope. Asa makitan si paratope? Antibodies. Okay? So, please try to recall that one. Okay? Next, you have your memory. Okay? Refers to the ability of the cell to respond much faster. Okay? If there is a repeated antigen exposure. Okay? So, matingala mo ba na, ala sir, bakit sa Streptococcus pyogenes, our body cannot recognize, our body does not produce a memory with Streptococcus pyogenes. Di ba? Kamatingala ka lang, ano, ikapila naman dyan ko nagka-sore throat. If my adaptive immunity will be working, then this organism will not cause a disease already. Tama? However, class, in our bacteriology, if you can still recall, that your S pyogenes, specifically your M protein, have 80 serotypes. Diba? Then therefore, with the entire lifespan mo, okay, possible ka na magkaroon ng streptococcal infection 80 times because we have a different, we have around 80 different serotypes of your M protein. Then therefore, for example, katong bata ka na-infect ka with the Streptococcus pyogenes, kato na M protein is serotype number 41. Tapos, pagka, nimo, kagahapon nag-sore throat ka. So, kato na sore throat kay serotype 80. So, the antibody produced during that time is different when you had your first infection. Kaya, wala siya memory. Dili siya paspas. Then, therefore, it can cause disease. So here, if you can observe, we were able to cover your innate immunity already, class. Okay, and then we will be covering your adaptive immunity. Your adaptive immunity is actually divided into two. You have your natural and your artificial. And under your natural, we have your passive and active infection. Then for artificial, also we have your passive and active. So for your natural class here, if you can observe, okay, example of your passive, you have your placental passage or passage of your antibody class. Okay, so this one naman will be, pwede siyang tung bata ka, tung nagdede sa mother, then therefore, there is a passive. Pag sinabing passive, di ba, kanang lang, pag manggod, ang term manggod sa immunology class, pag active will be infection. Pag passive, kay dili siya infection. So other ways, so for example, maternal. Okay, you have your immunoglobulin G from your mother to fetus or during lactation and colostrum. For your active naman class, alam naman natin no active, diba? So, syempre, pag active, example will be immunity produced after chickenpox infection or pag na-infect ka ng hepatitis B, so ayun, you will produce your own antibodies with that one. Compare with your artificial from the term itself class na artificial. So, hindi siya natural. So, example of your artificial will be under passive after injection of your gamma globulins. Example, ani class with your rabies, di ba? Katong, I don't know if kung nanay naka-experience din na napakan ng iro, di ba? Pag napakan kag iro, kay pag madto ka sa imuhang rabies center, they will try to have a post-exposure vaccination. And the post-exposure vaccination class is the antibody. Okay, so that is a gamma globulin. Why? Because your gamma globulins, the are antibodies, and antibodies are opsonins. And opsonins will try to bind to your rabies, tapos dali lang dahil sila ma-recognize sa imuhang immune system. Okay, para dili na mag-lead to rapid infection. Okay, next you have your serum or plasma containing high concentration of preformed antibodies produced by another person or animal that has been actively immunized. Yeah. I don't know if kung you're paying attention maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, where when COVID-19 started class, one of the best therapy recommended before in the hospitals are introducing the immunoglobulin of the patient was infected already. Kasi the antibodies or the serum from the infected individual, once daw na ibutang na nimo sa pasyente, mas dali lang siya which is theoretically correct. Okay, 'di ba? The serum or the plasma of the infected individual contains neutralizing antibodies against the COVID-19. Kaya pag pag ma-infect katong bag-o, na-infect na siya tapos pwede na day nato siya i-introduce og serum or plasma containing a high concentration of your preformed antibodies. But pagkaroon class dili naman ta naga-perform na sa hospital. Then for active, example will be obtained after vaccination, then booster injection to expand the memory pool. Okay, one best example na nagkakaroon tayo ng booster for hepatitis B. And hopefully that all of you got your hepatitis vaccine shots already because that is very crucial and important because we'll be working to the laboratory and hospital next year, di ba? Nagpatay na gani mo class. White uniform. Yan. So, dapat you need to also consider all biological hazards by protecting yourself, okay, through vaccination. Okay? So we will now cover the first part of your ontogeny, which is your T cell ontogeny. Okay, so with your T cell ontogeny, the T there class here, the T there actually stand for thymus. Okay, so eto class, this is thymus. Okay, this is thymus. So with other references, they use the thymus derived lymphocyte pero dili man gud na siya correct class. Dili correct ang mugamit og thymus derived because the lymphocyte does not derive from your thymus but they are educated in the thymus. So gikan niya po na silag bone marrow class, gikan niya po na silag bone marrow. From the bone marrow, they will go to your thymus to be educated. Okay? Kaya pag mag-discuss ta karon og ugma class ay I'll be using the term thymus university and bone marrow university. Why? Because in these two lymphoid organs, the lymphocytes, specifically with your T cells and B cells, will be educated. So sir, if kung mingon kag educated, unsay lang ginatunan? So they are actually learning how to discriminate from self to non-self. Kaya pag magawa sila sa imong peripheral blood, they know if kung self ni siya na antigen or non-self antigen. So for your lymphocytes class, T lymphocytes, Actually, it contains or constitute around 60 to 80% of the total lymphocyte. So, ibig sabihin, mas madami ang T lymphocyte over with your B cells. Kasi kung aabot ng 60 to 80, then therefore, nasa 20 to 40% lang yung B cells natin. Then therefore, with this majority of the number, with their T lymphocytes, then they play a central role in the cell-mediated immunity. Dalawa kasi yung types natin with your T lymphocyte class. Meron tayong T helper cells at saka T cytotoxic cells. So, ito naman T helper cells class, meron tayong markers nito. Diba? You have your CD4 at saka CD8. Your helper cells, kaya siya tinawag na helper cells because these cells will try to release cytokines to help to communicate, na there's something wrong in this area. Okay? They're not allowed, they're not capable of destroying a specific cell. Compare with the T cytotoxic cells, ayan, kasi cytotoxic, di ba? Then therefore, they can eliminate abnormal cells or infected cells class. So for the markers, you have your CD4, sorry. You have your CD4 here, at saka you have your CD8. So, sino dito yung si helper? Sino dito yung si cytotoxic class? So, meron ako mnemonics dito. And may palatandaan lang pala ako class. Kasi pag CD4, pag baliktarin mo si 4, magiging H yan siya class as helper. Okay? Tapos, if kung class, si 8, and then if kung we will try to delete that one, half, for example, kasi na-delete siya lahat. Example, this one, 8. Pag na-try mo daw itong i-delete into half class, magiging C to C siya. Di ba ganyan yung itsura niya pag magiging half? Kaya ko siya tinawag na cytotoxic cells. Cytotoxic cells. Yan, para-paraan para hindi makalimutan class. Okay? Okay. Ano daw class? Hindi ko naintindihan. Then let's move to the first stage of your B cell ontogeny. So you have your pre-thymic phase. So saan nagaganap ang pre-thymic class? Di ba? Kaya nga siya gitawag og pre-thymic kay wala pa daw siya sa thymus class. So so pasabutan ni class, pre-thymic. So this is the site of origin of your lymphoid precursor. Yan. So, katong bata ka, you have your yolk sac and you have your liver. Then, as you develop, we will be using our bone marrow as a sole producer of our lymphoid precursors. Okay? So, the lymphoid precursors migrate from the bone marrow to the thymus or thymic cortex. So, ang nasa bone marrow class, diba mo man ang mga lymphocytes, kay dili pa na sila sure kung maging T cell na sila or B cell na sila. So, ang kaning mga T cells kay mo ni silang mga estudyante na gusto mo adto sa Thymus University. Di sila gusto mag-study sa bone marrow. Okay? So, ano pa ni sila from bone marrow, saka pa ni sila pataas. Okay, to enter your Thymus University. Okay, then, kabalo naman ta kung asa ang class, pre-thymic, you have your bone marrow, yolk sac, and you have your liver. Then, as mentioned here, from bone marrow, they will migrate to your thymus. Pag nana sila sa thymus class, specifically with the cortex, ayan, because the cortex is the site of a migration natin with your lymphocyte. Okay, so the site of the T cell maturation development, then lymphoid precursor enter via the corticomedullary junction to the cortex of the thymus. So sa cortex, 'di ba, nasa tunga man ang cortex class. 'Di ba ano pa na ninyo? Ma-remember pa na ninyo ang Ma-remember pa ba ninyo nang naasa inyong histology? You have your medulla, 'di ba? You have your medulla, and then you have your cortex. Okay, so you have your medulla and then you have your cortex. So karon asa man mag-migrate si ano class, si tawag ani, asa man mag-migrate si lymphocyte sa cortex na part. Okay? Then, pag naa na sila dito class sa imuhang ano, cortical part sa imuhang thymus, then they will be named as double negative 1 or DN1. Okay? So, muna ang first thymus lymphoid precursor natin class. Pero, take note, not yet committed to become a T cell pa na sila. So, niadto lang na sila dito class para mag-take og exam sa Timos University. Pero wala pa ta kabalo kung makapasa siya or dili. Okay? So not yet committed to become a T-cell. So dili pa sure na makasulod siya sa Timos Jud. Okay, so sir, what will happen kung dili siya kapasa sa Timos? Mamatay sa class, dili siya pwede mo balik sa bone marrow. Kaya nagpatuga-tuga man siya adtog syudad para maka adto sa Timos University. So pag dili siya kapasa dito, dili na pud siya pwede mo balik class sa bone marrow sad life. So pat yun siya dito. Okay? Then no cell surface marker found on the T cell kaya yang itsura class upaw lang na siya. Okay? So that's one. Okay? No cell surface marker found on the T cell. Then DN1, no CD4 nor CD8 surface markers. So inala pa na siya no class. Okay? So pagsulod pa lang daw niya sa thymus, pagsulod niya sa Timos class, inana yung nawong upaw pa siya. Okay? Mag-take pa man na siya exam. Tapos, kung makapasa na siya class, mahimo na siyang double negative 2. Okay? Or precursor T cell. Yan. So, makadecide na dyan sa class na committed to become E T cell na. Yan. Okay? So, ready to, na ni siya, study. Start studying the self and non-self. Pero later pa na class kay kung 'di ba pag first year kay dapat formative years man ang first year, second year class ninyo 'di ba sa UIC. So inana pud ang T-cell ontogeny. Kay formative years man niya so dapat mabuo sa iyahang personality, ang character na dapat before siya maging third year kay jud siya makaya niya tanan ang screening. Okay? Then we call that one DN2, pwede ding nerve cells or early thymocytes or small thymocytes. And therefore, class, take note, highlight natin class, take note with this one, they are now committed to become T-cell. Okay, nakapasa naman sila class. Okay, so with this one, appearance of your glycol protein cell surface receptors and that includes your CD44. Ayan. Diba? Kay naman, pagsulod niya, hatagan sa ID, CD44, hatagan po siya CD25, tapos hatagan po na siya og CD2. And then, pag nakompleto na ang CD44, 25, CD2 class, mag-express po ang cytoplasmic CD3. Later, na siya? Kanang importante na siya with your intracellular signaling. Pag-abot sa screening manggod kay pag naimudikit na anta dyan sa iyaha, si CD3 ang maghatag og intracellular signaling. Okay? So masabtan ninyo ang class, ang DN1 from your DN2, ang DN1 dali lang kayo, upaw lang siya. Not committed. Okay? So possible na mamatay pa siya, dili siya madawat sa thymic or sa thymus. Pagdawat niya sa class, sa entrance exam sa Timos University, then hatagan na dahil siya mga markers. So, na-add to si CD44, CD25, CD2, plus CD3. Okay? So, ang tawag na sa iya karon kay DN2, tapos committed to become a T-cell. So, sir, anong gitawag man siya double negative? Kay gitawag siya double negative class, kay ang ato amanggong term na gigamit diri, you have your CD4, class, you have your CD4 and then you have your CD8. Kaya siya gitawag og double negative kay wala siya CD4, wala pa pud siya CD8. Kaya siya gitawag og double negative. Okay? Double negative 1, not committed. Double negative 2, committed na sila na maging student with the Timos University, hatagan na siya ID, uniform, and etc. Yan. Tapos, na siya class? Mag-start na siya o express o TCR o T-cell receptor. Pag mag-start na siya class, may muna na siyang DN3. Okay? So DN3, we also known as your thymocyte. Okay? So, it will begin expressing your T cell receptor or TCR starting with your alpha. Ayan. Okay, so ano pa siya? Receptor, di ba? Inana magnaong ang receptor. Alpha pa niya siya, class. Okay, this is your alpha. Okay. Tapos, double negative pa siya, class, di ba? Kaya wala pa man siya CD4, wala pa siya CD8. Okay? So, napod siya yung mga kato. Pabilin nga po yung mga DN2 na mga markers. Okay? So, karon ang kung i-compare nimo sa DN3 o DN2, the difference is that your DN3 will start producing your incomplete partial. P class stand for your partial TCR. Okay? So TCR stand for your T cell receptor. Okay? So syempre, incomplete or partial pa man na siya, class. Then therefore, the next stage should create the beta na already. So you have your DN4. So here, class, same daw lang daw siya with your DN3. However, with the DN4, may complete na tayo na TCR. Then this one will be your beta na class. Okay? So, ito beta to siya, class. Okay? Late kasi si beta. Ito alpha to siya. Okay? Then, proliferates in response to interleukin-7 released by your thymic epithelial cells or TEC. Yan. So, sariling sikap, class. Ang mga thymic epithelial cells mag-release ng interleukin-7, tapos pwede na nila dawaton, tapos mag-proliferate na sila. Okay? So, natay upat ka buok ng DN. So, you have your DN1, upaw, not committed. DN2, may mga markers na. Okay? DN3, mag-start ang partial TCR. DN4, full or complete na ang TCR. And then, after that one, class, we will be expressing na your double positive TP. Yan. Eh, kaganina, double negative man to karon, double positive na. Ibig sabihin, class, dalawa na yung express ni T-cell class. You have your CD4 at saka CD8. Sorry. You have your CD4 and then you have your CD8. Pero 'di ba, kabalo man jud ta, class, na dapat isa lang jud ang mabilin. Either mahimo siyang CD8 or mahimo siyang CD4. Wala tay circulating lymphocytes, class, that express the two. So during the ontogeny, dapat isa lang jud ang iyahang ma-produce. Either the T cell will become a helper or a cytotoxic. Okay? So, other name of your double positive T cell class, you have an intermediate thymocyte or common thymocyte. Or pwede po nato siyang tawagong CD4 plus, CD8 plus T cells. Then therefore, nasa CD4 ug nasa CD8. Pag nasa CD4 ug nasa CD8 class, diri na mag-start ang screening process. Okay? So nag-third year na sa class. Na nato kung ready na ba siya mag-internship. So ang mahitabo sa nimo, class, positive nimo na double positive nimo na T cell, your lymphocytes will introduce your self-antigens already with this one. Okay? So both your CD4 and CD8 are serving as your co-receptors, okay, of your TCR during antigen recognition. So although we did not cover yet your major histocompatibility complex 1 and 2, but for now, at least you know that the partner of CD4 is 2, class 2. The partner of your CD8 is class 1. Okay? So, yun yung natin. Tawag nito. Partnership ng CD4 to class 2, then CD1 into class 1. All your immune cells na merong nucleus express your class 1. Okay? So, pag abot na to sa major histocompatibility complexes, you will determine how the cells will try to check using your expression of your class 1 and class 2. Then the cell surface marker for T killer cells are CD8 T cells. Ayun. So, ayun ba? Balik lang sa class. Then let's start with your screening of your T cells. Okay, so the T cell interact with your self-antigen presented by your thymic epithelial cells. So your thymic epithelial cells class will try to present your self-antigen. So example of your self-antigen, pwedeng heart, liver, etc. All self-antigen. Okay, so diri na i-check class if kung pag ipagawas or maging intern ba ning kaning T cell, kabalo ba siya na ang iyahang trabaho kay mo kuha og dugo, basig ang buhaton ni intern class kay pag makita siya pasyente yang patyon. Okay, wala ta kabalo. Kaya pag abot sa screening of your T cells, gina-check na nato if kung nag-react to self-antigens ang imuhang T cells. So we have class? Three fates. Okay, so tulo ka buok ang pwede agian ni lymphocyte. So first, you have your death by neglect. Yan. Okay, so negligible avidity of TCR towards a self-antigen. Then you have your too low avidity signals the cell to undergo apoptosis. So for example, here class, so you have your TEC. Tapos sa TEC class, okay, so since your TEC here, ito TEC, ito yung receptor niya, then ito yung antigen. Tapos, i-present na niya kay TCR, T-cell receptor. Tapos, pag si TCR ni mo class with your lymphocyte, will have a too low avidity. Yan, so dili kay siya mag-react class, low. Low de ka mag-react ha. Okay, ano naman na sa class? Tawag ni basig pro-B3 na siya. So, ang may tabo, patyon niya ang cell. Yan. For example, pagdikit niya pagdikit niya class, dapat man gunitan na niya, diba? Dapat gunitan man na ni lymphocyte ang imong antigen, pero ang may tabo class, too low avidity. Yan. So, pag too low avidity, patyon ang cell. Yan. Tapos, ang next na pod class is, you have your high avidity. Diba? Kay kaganina, that by negligence, ang isa negative selection. With the negative selection, ang gina-check niya class, if kung clingy, kaayo si T-cell. Pag clingy kay si T-cell class, for example, this one, si T-cell man ni, diba? Kani, si T-cell ni class. Pag si T-cell masyadong clingy sa self-antigen, di ba? High avidity of TCR towards the self-antigen or too high avidity signal the cell to undergo apoptosis. And pag masyado kang clingy, kabalo na ka-class, unsay mahitabo sa imuha. Okay, you'll do your apoptosis. Yan. So, mamatay ka. Why? Because the thymus will not allow a clingy T-cell to go to your peripheral blood. Why? Because it can cause a potential autoimmunity. So, dapat dili jud siya pwede. So, nanatay duha. Either death by negligence, okay, death by negligence, death by neglect as if it's a too low avidity, okay, tapos negative selection pag high avidity. Then, ang pangtulo class, syempre, positive selection. Affinity which falls in between. So tama lang, 'di ba? Na too low, na too high allows only your double positive T cells with functional TCR to survive. Okay? So if kung pag dikit ani tama lang, dili kay sa strong ang avidity, then the thymus will allow this class cell to proceed to the next level. Yan. So the thymocytes that are positively selected then undergo a lineage determination process in which isa lang ang mag-survive. Either tanggalon or ma-downregulate ang CD4 or ma-downregulate ang CD8. So as a result, the thymocyte will be either a single expressing of a CD4 T cells or a CD8. Yan. So, pwedeng CD4, pwede siyang CD8. Tapos, pag abot nila sa cortex, kasumana, ato na din sila sa medullary na part. Second negative selection occurs in the medulla. Imagine glass, diba? Nakapasa na sila sa first screening. Pag abot nila sa fourth year, nala po'y screening class. Okay, so a negative selection occurs. Di ba kaganina na ano naman nato tong negative selection class? The negative selection will check the high avidity of your TCR to your self-antigen. Okay, so muna yung una-unaon. Sa kaning negative selection, high avidity. Okay, so pag abot sa medullary, they will be, ano class? Screen again, then interrogating dendritic cells na ang nasa medullary class. Kay kaganina, diba? Sa imong cortex, kitsa ang naa, CTEC. Kasi you have your thymic epithelial cells. Kay sa medullary, ang naa si interdigitating dendritic cells that will present the self-antigen to a single positive T cell, either pwedeng CD4 or CD8. The second screening class will prevent the release of your T cells that potentially cause autoimmunity. Yan, di ba? So, mas power ang class, screening ni T cell. Compare kay B cell. Tomorrow, matingala lang mo class na isa lang, kasaalang nag-screen si B cell. Pero pag abot sa T cell, diba, may tatlong ways nagi-aniya. And then sa B cell, duha lang man, positive selection o negative selection lang. And then, after that one, the single positive T cell that survives the secondary negative selection process becomes immature, naive, virgin T cells, either CD4 or CD8. And then they will exit the thymus and seeds on the secondary lymphoid organs. Example, spleen, lymph nodes, gut, etc. Okay, so take note with this one also, class. The T helper cells to cytotoxic T cells or CD4 to CD8 ratio is 2:1. Dapat mas daghan taog helper cells over kay cytotoxic cells. And then, the role of your T cell in the adaptive immune response, they will interact between the T cell and APCs or antigen-presenting cell, initiating an event in the adaptive immune response. So either the T helper cells will try to release cytokines that will either call the B cells, then B cells will try to produce antibodies. With cytotoxic cells naman, class, they are capable of destroying the cell directly. So as I mentioned earlier, the action of your cytotoxic T cell once activated by antigen in the lymph node or spleen, cytotoxic T cells leaves the secondary lymphoid tissue and circulate to the site of infection. Then they bind and kill infected cells by triggering apoptosis. And then, the cytotoxic T cell recognize antigen association with their class 1 complexes. Okay? So, all nucleated host cells express class 1 antigen on their cell surface, and cytotoxic T cells act as a primary defense against intracellular pathogen. So, ganito kasi yung nangyayari, class. So, for example, para may idea lang talaga kayo. So, for example, nucleated yan, enterocytes. So, meron yan silang class? Pangit ng ko. So they have ganyan na lang, class. This one is MHC class 1, major MH, taka lang kung sulat, class. MH, major histocompatibility complex type 1. Okay? So kasi nucleated siya here, then therefore type 1 siya. Diba? Sabi here, class, all nucleated host cells express class 1. Okay? Kaya, pag may nucleus daw, class, then therefore meron silang MHC class 1. Tapos, unsa daw may tabo, class? If you have your bacteria, yan, for example, E. coli to, class. Wag na lang E. coli, you have your Vibrio cholerae. Yan. If this will be your Vibrio cholerae, class, then they will try to infect the cell here. The Vibrio cholerae, all majority of the bacteria, will try to what? Okay, they will try to down-regulate your class 1. So, maupaw na si nucleated cell class. So, kung maupaw na si nucleated cell class, nana na siya nawong. So, karon ang imuhang ang imuhang C cytotoxic T cells, they have a receptor that will bind to your class 1. Tapos, pagkita ni diri class CD8, la, nganong walay CD8, ay, nganong walay class 1 diri? Kabalo na ko, infected ka. So, sayang buhaton, yaning buslutan class, mag-release siya mga chemicals dira, and then patyon niya ang cell. Yan. Okay, so yun yung process natin, whether CD8. Ayan pala class O, di ba? Mas maganda yung picture. Okay. They have your class 1. Also, this one is another mechanism class where the class 1 will present the antigen, then the TCR of your cytotoxic T cell will recognize that one. Tapos, they will release your perforin and chemical that will try to pour, okay, the infected cell. Tapos, pag nabangagan na class, the granzymes will go inside here. Then the granzymes will try to destroy the mRNA of the cell, then causing a cell death. So you have your granzymes and you have your perforin. Also additional with the function of your cytotoxic T cell is that if the target cell will try to express your FAST class. So, okay, so you have your FAST and FAST ligand. Okay, so with your, if for example, so if for example the class, the cell is infected already with your infected already with a bacteria, so what will happen is that not specific to class not specific to bacteria only but all all infectious agent natin. So they will try to express your FAS. And then since our cytotoxic T cell contains your class, contains our FAS ligand, then the FAS ligand will detect only the expression of FAS. So supposedly class, the FAS will not should not be expressed. Those cells expressing a FAS indicates that the cell is infected already. Okay? Then let's move to your T helper cells. With your T helper cells, the first activating signal to induce the transformation of your T cell occurs when the CD4 T cells encounter an antigen along with your class 2. Yan. Diba? Kasi yung sa cytotoxicity cells, sa cytotoxic cells, class 1. Pag si helper cells, class 2. The two main subsets of your TH cells or T helper cells is your TH1 and your TH2, where we able to cover that one with your cytokines. So ano yung action niya class? Okay, for sure, of course, it will secrete your interleukin cytokines, okay, that will be beneficial to the helper cells itself or to cytotoxic T cells or to other cells. Because remember that your cytokines will serve as your communicating molecules. And that's it for the adaptive immunity part 1, which is your adaptive, your T cell ontogeny class.